if she does not want the child. But something dawned on me. Of every path the biological father could go down, he's at the mercy of the woman's sole discretion. Although women have very difficult choices to make, she at least has the choice. But for biological fathers, they have no say over their parental destiny. This is my friend Dara. She's 8 months pregnant with her first child, and she's a lifelong feminist.
It seems from MRIs, from what I've read, that women seem to have more reproductive rights than men do. I don't know what to say, like, we carry children, they're never gonna carry children. It's just a different thing. So I guess, as much as possible, take the steps to prevent yourself being in that situation. It's just, I don't know what to say. There's no, there's nothing, like, a woman, you know, women have been blamed for, and still are, for, you know, unwanted pregnancies, choosing to have an abortion, not choosing to have an abortion, choosing to put their child up for adoption, when, you know, the burden lies on a single mother. If the man leaves, there's really, you know, societally, she's lambasted. So there's a lot of things that women deal with in that regard that men don't actually deal with. So I can have compassion for their situation, but I don't know that it's going to change in the way they want it to because it's biology, you know?
So if you're going to be having sex that could result in pregnancy, and you haven't had this conversation with the woman that you're having sex with, you better have it. You better have it fast. That's when the man has the ability to make decisions, either not to engage in sex or to use condoms and to use other forms of contraception. So that's where his role comes in. Once he's impregnated, she's the one now faced with continuing a pregnancy, faced with the health risks that accompany pregnancy. So his rights have to be exercised early. But once she's pregnant, all decisions must be hers because ultimately she is the most impacted. There's just no question. And she ultimately has the responsibility for that child.
So before we were married, he promised me we would have 2 kids, and now he doesn't want any more. My friends think I should trick him and stop taking my birth control.
Men have never been in control of our bodies. We're the ones in control. Clap if you think that she should trick him. My people. Up next, everybody.
So it sounds like men's reproductive rights are limited to the choice of whether or not to have sex and the choice of whether or not to use protection. But what if he's tricked into fatherhood? Or what if he's not even the father? What does paternity fraud look like?
It's ugly. It's extraordinarily ugly. And we have to distinguish between paternity fraud and wrongful paternity.
What's the difference?
Wrongful paternity can be innocent. Okay, we went to a party. I had sex with 6 guys. I think it was when I was hanging out the window I got pregnant, but I wasn't sure. But, you know, if anybody knows that guy's name, would you please have him call me? And then she names one of the other guys, and he didn't have sex with her. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't intentional. She wasn't trying to harm anybody. She was just trying to figure out who it was. Wrongful paternity. More often, and less facetiously. Okay, I'm married, I had an affair. Obviously here, there's all sorts of problems because there are more victims than the person who's named as dear old dad who may be the wrong one. There's everybody involved in the family, like a situation in Texas when the family had 5 little towhead kids, all guys, all little blondos. And all of a sudden one day one little blondo kid gets in trouble, has to go to the hospital, they can't get a hold of mom, they get a hold of dad, dad rushes to the hospital, needs to give blood. Whoops. Can't do it, wrong blood. What? All kids look alike. Turns out it was the guy down the street.
You've heard of this thing?
No, it's a real case. So what happens to this family? Can you fathom what happens to this family? How do you think the kids feel when they find out dear old dad isn't dear old dad and it's the guy down the street? How do you think dad feels? That these 5 little boys that he still loves dearly, when he finds out they're not his bio children, but he still can't tear away because he loves them. He's devoted himself to these. How do you think he feels? I mean, horrific. Horrific. That's not wrongful, that's deliberate.
So that's paternity fraud.
That's paternity fraud.
She knew who the father was and lied about it. Paul was right when he said, trying to understand the men's rights movement is like trying to understand a snowdrift, one snowflake at a time. There are unique fathers' rights issues that vary between unmarried, married, and divorced dads. But there are also men's rights issues for non-biological fathers. Like this man who is facing jail time for failure to pay child support for a child that DNA tests prove isn't his.
Carnell Alexander still owes more than $30,000 to the state for a child that's not his because the mom wrote his name down because she needed to name someone in order to get welfare benefits.
And I had to put him down as the father. That was the only way I can get a sister.
I'm almost homeless. I'm almost in jail. I'm out of work. My money is being threatened to be taken.
He says the law needs to be changed, so when this happens, as it often does, other men don't become dad by default.
A lot of times people wonder about MRIs, why are you guys so angry? And my answer to that is, why aren't you? How can anybody look at this and not be angered by it? And the only answer to that I've ever been able to come up with is that people aren't angry because they don't see men as human beings.
I continued traveling North America, meeting MRAs from all walks of life, hearing their personal stories, their red pill moments. I met a young man who was sexually abused when he was 16 years old while living at a residential home for people with developmental disabilities.
She's the only woman I've done anything ever with, partly because it just messed me up so much.
She continues working there.
She hit me in the face. She actually hit me throughout the house, chasing me throughout the house. When I reported my domestic assault to the police officers, I did not at all bring up the fact that I was sexually assaulted, because if he wasn't going to believe that I was a victim of domestic violence, there was no way he was going to believe that I was going to be a victim of sexual assault.
I met the honey badgers, women who are men's rights advocates.
And then there was a 15-year-old boy, there was a 35-year-old woman, and then later on she came out of jail and she was able to collect child support from this boy that she raped after getting out of jail. So there's lack of fairness for men in the court systems. When police officers would show up to a domestic violence case, there was often men were just taken away without asking what even happened. It's just presumed that men are the criminals.
I was assaulted several times, and I never got any help. I went to the police still bleeding a couple of times. And one police officer said, I'll never forget this, he said, if she starts hitting you again, you better get out of there fast, because if she just breaks a fingernail trying to hit you, we'll arrest you.
I mean, I can't tell you at this point how many guys I've talked to who are like, yeah, she stabbed me and they put me in jail. Not only are there endless studies that show women are just as violent as men are, when I would talk about it, invariably, men would start coming out of the woodwork with stories. Stories they were afraid to tell. Stories that they got laughed at for. Stories that they got blamed for. It's hideous.
This is not flattering to men, to talk about men's vulnerabilities.
No.
To talk about the ways that they are not strong, and that they are, weak. And to be honest about it, it's not flattering. A solution for both genders is that we need to be able to recognize how men are vulnerable, and we need to be able to recognize how women are actors. Because we have a huge blind spot, especially when women do bad things.
My best friend that I grew up with since kindergarten was being physically abused by his wife, who he'd been married to for 20 years. She'll break glass and throw it at him, punch him. I've seen it just happen spontaneously, and it was frequent. and he's